Hey, welcome in everyone to the you name the show. It's our call-in show that is going live each and every day with you folks. 10 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. Give me Saturday and Sunday off. Monday through Friday from right now through the end of the college football season, which of course has been extended in 2024 to Super Bowl type times near the end of January. I believe it's January 20th. So until January 21st, we will be here 10 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday, with a few caveats along the way, I'm sure, one of which we will explain. We appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. And yes, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Check out the programming update for August that we posted yesterday to the channel. It outlines the array of selections here at the Voice of College Football, everything involved, not just here on the national channel, but throughout the team network from team to team, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all the way through. Hope you caught College Football After Dark on Sunday night. Of course, that leads us off every Sunday at 10:30 Eastern with Exploring with Ben. And you sit right here. You deliver the content. You deliver the debate. You deliver the analysis on Sunday nights. If you're a member of the Voice of College Football community, sign up right here on YouTube or on Patreon, and you have an automatic spot on the panel every Sunday night with Ben and company and a cast of thousands. We appreciate you being here. And yes, for right now, it's the live show. It's the call-in show. It's the Voice of College Football. This is what we do with you. Some things will slightly change, but basically it's me and you, and it's us as the Voice of College Football talking the game we all love each and every day. But we are taking your suggestions on what we should name this show. And if your selection is chosen, then you get a free item from the merch store. I better check out the pricing on the merch. I think we've got a couple $100 items in there. So this is going to cost me a penny or two. That's okay. You're worth it. If you successfully name this show. And I got to warn you that I'm not a good naming of shows. If you followed a pattern here at the Voice of College Football, Michigan Wolverines live, Miami Hurricanes live, Florida State Seminoles live, Ohio State Buckeyes live, Iowa Hawkeyes live, Nebraska Cornhuskers live. There's a pattern there. It took me weeks of brainstorming, think tanks, bringing in consultants, paying them tens of thousands of dollars to come up with that naming convention, as you can tell. Creativity has not been my strong suit. So there you go. We just hit you with the basics right there. So if you can come up with a name, whether creative or otherwise, believe me, I've come up with 6 or 7, and one just hit me as I sat down on this fake leather, just a few seconds ago. I thought, you know what? That might be the one. I think that might be the one. But if you can wow me with a name, then get a mug, get a t-shirt, get a jacket, get a hoodie, get whatever you want from the Voice of College Football merch store. Okay, this is all about talking college football with you, and we will have some amazing guests. And so we are awaiting Pat Murphy from Bucknuts 247 Sports. We will also take your calls. And we do have a caller on the line, so we will get to that in just a second, unless Pat shows up here, and I better check on him to make sure that the link arrived safely. We also want to let you know that this week, a Voice of College Football right here on the main channel, brought to you by Chris Gates Fitness Training Camp. Yes, training camp starts across the country here in the next few days, but training camp can start for you immediately. Grab the link in the description section of all the videos. Right at the top of the description section is the link to training camp. $10 deal for the first month. I highly recommend. We will talk about it a little bit more later in the show, but our sponsor this week, Chris Gates Fitness Training Camp. I was looking at the 2025 commits coming in, and how about those Auburn Tigers? Just in the last few days, they've signed one of the best cornerbacks in the country, one of the best defensive linemen in the country. They got themselves a punter, which of course is vital. So look out for Auburn in recruiting, and I'm sure we will be joined soon by Kyle Loomis from E2C Network as Auburn goes to training camp. Check out a number of videos we've got posted previewing teams entering training camp. We have done that all across the board. Also, keep in mind that my program rankings have started. I checked out last year's because I wanted to make a rundown of comparisons between last year and this year and how much those programs have either ascended or descended on the list. So we released 100 through 133, or 134 now. Welcome, Kennesaw State. 134 in college football and FBS play. So we released the first video on Sunday, 100 to 134. Please check out all the videos, our program rankings. Keep in mind, this is not a ranking for 2024. This is not a team ranking. This is a program ranking. It's also not an all-time program ranking. We may get back to that. I don't know if I can fit that in before the season because we, of course, did the program rankings series earlier, but I didn't put it all together and people want a national ranking. So we should put that all together and provide that for all of you. Amazing guests are lined up here at the Voice of College Football. We had Phil Steele on last week, and Phil and I had a nice little conversation after the show, and he's like, we got to do this again. Let's get together before the season kicks off. Absolutely. Anytime we can get Phil Steele, bam, he's going to be here. Steve Dace, 2 shows in the last couple of weeks. Check those out with Steve's power rankings and his season predictions, which were awfully interesting. I did hit him with the Mark Rogers Voice of College Football prediction test, which is the ±3. And if you can tell me what the ±3 is, anybody who can tell me the ±3 factor here at the Voice of College Football, free item of merch. So the first person in the comment section that I see that identifies what the ±3 factor is here at the Voice of College Football, a item of free merch for you. But Phil Steele will be back in the next few weeks. Probably have Steve Dace back on here in the next few weeks. Also back and forth conversations with Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, not the Voice of College Football, but Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart, who would love to come on, as well as Peter Burns of the SEC Network, our buddy Peter, who we used to have on all the time and have lost kind of contact with him, but he would love to come on the show as well. Just wanted SEC Media Days to clear out of the way. Let's take a call as we await Pat Murphy from Bucknuts, and we got Michael on the line.
Hey, Mark. Good morning.
And I apologize, Michael, because boom, Pat has joined us. And as soon as I get my setup going there, Pat, how you doing today?
I am good, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Pat, I don't know if you understand the honor that you should be feeling right now as the first guest of our new call-in show every morning. But you are the guy.
I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, we appreciate you being here. And I know that your professional life has ramped up considerably just in the last couple of weeks. Of course, Big Ten Media Days last week. Unfortunately, couldn't see you this year as we did last year, but we were there with our guy JR. But Big Ten Media Days last week. I'm sure Ohio State's going to have its media day leading into training camp, and then they hit the field. So we've got you here to size up the Buckeyes. And I'm going to point it back toward Big Ten Media Days and anything else that you've gathered that really stands out to you in terms of the mindset of this team and of Ryan Day as they hit camp.
It's funny because having covered the team all off season, going back to coming out of the Cotton Bowl and the disappointment that was that loss to Missouri, the tone at media days and the tone the first time we talked to any players, the beginning of the offseason, really hasn't changed. The players that came back have done so for a reason. There is a clear understanding that this team believes that they can win a national championship this year. And while in the past, there have been talented Ohio State teams that have kind of shied away from that and, didn't want to put too much expectations on the players, on the staff, despite what those of us in the media were saying, what fans expected. They are leaning into that in a big way. And, we knew that, but I think the rest of the Big Ten, even the rest of the country, maybe got a good perspective of that at Big Ten Media Days. Ryan Day on the podium basically saying, there's still work to be done, but we know what this team is capable of. Players reiterating that message as well. When we spoke to them, they sent 3 seniors to Big Ten Media Day: Emeka Egbuka, Denzel Burke, and Jack Sawyer, all guys who made the decision to come back because they felt there was unfinished business. So they're not backing away from these expectations. And, I asked some of the guys about, what you want to have at the end of the season, and that's lifting that national championship. You want to win the Big Ten. You want to beat Michigan. But you got to get there first, right? You got to get through fall camp. You got to get through the non-conference slate, which is not an exciting one. You don't play Oregon, the first real big game of the season, until October. How do you make every game as big as some of those other games? And that was kind of the question I had going in. Denzel Burke gave me an answer that, look, it has to be every game is a national championship game in our minds. And I think there's still some challenges to do that when you're playing a team like, an Akron. No offense to Akron, but that's not Michigan. That's not a college football playoff opponent. And Emeka Egbuka told me, well, if we don't beat Akron, a lot of those other games aren't going to matter, right? So I think it's going to be an interesting thing to follow throughout fall camp and the start of this season, kind of how they stay fully motivated as, kind of the grind of camp, the grind of the season starts to take place. But no doubt this team expects to be national championships at the end of the season. And look, the talent is there, but it's about doing all the other little things and having some things go your way, right?
Pat, the entire offseason, I've been weighing this expectation load, and I go back and forth because on one hand, and I think I've finally figured it out, because on one hand, I think ever since Jim Tressel pretty much got this thing rolling 20 years ago, isn't this team ranked in the preseason top 5 every year? like what's the difference this year? Okay, they're 2 1 year, they're 3 1 year, they're 4, they're 2. That's where they've lived for this entire time. So there's that. And the players said that a number of times. Okay, we're at Ohio State. We're gunning for a national championship every year. On the other hand, then I put together, okay, the 3-game losing streak to Michigan. These guys could have went to the NFL. They decided to come back, and the big splash that never existed before, free agency in college football and acquiring all this talent. And it looks like, okay, we're gunning for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of echoed what Ryan Day has tried to say throughout the offseason of, look, we're at Ohio State. The expectations are always that we win every game, beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and compete for a national championship. And I think he's right. And he understands what's at stake here, but I also understand why he publicly is saying the things that he is. I think the difference, however, is what some of the players have said. And it started with Denzel Burke. I think it was in mid-March when we talked to a lot of the returning guys, and he came out and said, natty or bust. And that's kind of been the mantra of this team. Yes, they are always talented. They always have, top recruiting classes and are highly ranked. But I just think that this year feels different because of, like you mentioned, 12 guys that could have gone to the NFL and probably been decently highly drafted. Obviously, each of them have their own reasons for coming back, and the draft is probably part of that. But I go back to Burke again. He said he got a late first, early second round grade from the pre-draft process. I think in most other years, if they had gone 2-1 against Michigan, maybe made it to a national championship final or national championship game, won a couple Big Tens, I think he's gone, right? But a player like that coming back, Jack Sawyer kind of leading the way as a Columbus product, talking to his classmates about, look, this is what this means for Ohio State fans, for the state of Ohio, for the city of Columbus, all this. And if we can come back and accomplish this, especially, let's not forget, on the heels of Michigan winning a national championship, sort of doing a similar thing with so many guys coming back. I think that's kind of where the difference is. And then you mentioned it too, and that was the other thing, the transfer portal. And not only, we've gotten used to the transfer portal, but Ohio State hasn't done what they did this offseason. And some of it had to do with Nick Saban retiring and the availability of a Caleb Downs, even Julian Sayin, who may not have an impact this year, but certainly in the future. But numbers-wise, Ohio State hasn't been a huge transfer portal team, but the players that they got and the guys that can come in and make an impact, Caleb Downs, Will Howard, potentially, assuming he wins the starting quarterback job. Seth McLaughlin could be the starting center and certainly is going to play somewhere on the offensive line if it's not there. Guys like that can come in and immediately play. Quinshon Judkins, when you already have Travion Henderson likely coming back, though he hadn't announced that publicly. So, yes, the difference is it feels like they've pushed all their chips to the middle of the table and are saying we're all in, and they're also saying that publicly. And I think that is where it's different from past seasons.
Denzel Burke in particular intrigues me. Here's this softly spoken individual, kind of like a Walter Payton type voice in a sense, but big vibrato comes out of him. And unless you're digging for player interviews, of course, you guys are, you in particular are used to talking to these guys, but we don't hear from them very often unless you're really digging for interviews. It's just a few times a year. And I don't know if he's got a chip on his shoulder. He has to know that people know he's good, but maybe in a sense, he sounds like he seems slighted and like he believes he's the best, and maybe he's not given quite that type of status out there.
Well, Denzel said he wants to leave this season knowing that, with everyone knowing that he's the best cornerback in college football. So he put it out there. Simple as that. Look, he had a great freshman season. I don't think a lot of people expected him to come in and start right away outside of Denzel Burke, but he did. Started week 1, started every game that season. His sophomore season was a bit of a dip. He dealt with some injuries. He talked last offseason about how it was the first time he dealt with major injuries, and mentally he just didn't know how to deal with that and was never able to respond. He then admitted at Big Ten Media Days that beyond that, he probably got a little complacent in the offseason before his sophomore year. Just a little bit of maturing needed to happen. And when he didn't perform up to the level he expected to, it kind of clicked for him. And you saw it last season. If you look at his statistics, nothing jumps out at you, but that's because quarterbacks weren't throwing his way because he was one of the better cornerbacks in the country. And then you had guys on the other side of the field like Davison Igbinosun and Jordan Hancock who could then make some plays. So I think Denzel recognizes if he put in the work this offseason, he could be one of the top DBs taken in the draft next year, and on all the other stuff we talked about, the chance to leave a legacy at Ohio State by, turning it around against Michigan, winning the Big Ten, and potentially winning a national championship. And so, I think all of the guys, frankly, whether you're Denzel Burke and you did have a decently high grade, or you're a guy like Jack Sawyer who hasn't had the career maybe he wanted to, or people thought he would, but did really start to come on the second half of last season, back playing full-time defensive end. They all want to win, and no doubt about that. But they also all have individual things that they could still improve on. Marvin Harrison Jr. could have come back, right? But he could have accomplished those team things. There's talk about the fact that he really considered it. But in the end, if you're the number 4 pick in the draft, you got to go, right? And so these guys that did come back still have more that they can earn in the eyes of the NFL.
Pat Murphy's here breaking down the Buckeyes. Training camp's just days away in Columbus. Catch Pat's work at Bucknuts 247 Sports. When officially is training camp?
Thursday morning is when we kick it all off. I believe we will be able to be there. That has been the word, though we haven't gotten in a full schedule yet. But Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are the first 4 days. They are open to fans. I believe there's still tickets available, so fans actually can get a look. And then I think they'll take Monday off, is kind of what Ryan Day was saying, and then jump back into things that next week. But yeah, all kicks off the end of this week.
Folks, check out Chris Gates Fitness, his training camp program. The link's in the description section of all the videos, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. Let's grind on some personnel here. Maybe because he wanted to take some pressure off of Will Howard and the quarterbacks, I'm not discounting what Ryan Day said about the offensive line, but he almost put it on the offensive line at one point during Big Ten Media Days to say, this is the key to the season. We've got to get this figured out. We've got to improve there. The guard position was brought up in particular.
Yeah, this is the key to Ohio State's season in my mind. And I think I've walked back from the ledge, for lack of a better phrase, kind of how panicky I think people should be about the offensive line. Going into the offseason, I think a lot of people expected, okay, the offensive line wasn't great in 2023. They'll probably go to the transfer portal and add a guy, right? That didn't happen. But what did happen is development. And I think, especially in this new transfer portal era, we often forget about that these guys can get better in the offseason, right? And so you look at a guy like Josh Simmons at left tackle. Well, he got better throughout the season. He came from San Diego State. You could tell at first that this was a lot for him to start at left tackle. He was a right tackle at San Diego State. As the season went on, he showed the potential, the promise of the player that they recruited out of the transfer portal. I thought by the end of the season, he was pretty good. Now you build on that in the offseason. You got to put in the work. It sounds like he has. A guy like Josh Fryer, right tackle, didn't have a great season last year, first year as a full-time starter. But all the talk is he has put in the work to transform his body, to be in better shape, to be able to do some more things. It sounds like he's going to hold on to that right tackle job, which is probably where I think most people thought they would go to get a transfer portal lineman. The center position is technically still up for grabs. Ryan Day said during Big Ten Media Days, Carson Hinsman and Seth McLaughlin are still competing for that. But Seth McLaughlin started the spring game. He was the guy they brought in from Alabama. In my estimation, and from everything I understand, the plan is, unless something crazy happens during fall camp, that Seth McLaughlin will start at center. And then you've got the right guard spot that's still up for grabs in terms of Carson Hinsman, Luke Montgomery, Tegra Shabola. That'll be settled in camp. I didn't mention the left guard. That's Donovan Jackson. He'll be back for his third year as a starter. No concerns there. So look, if Ohio State gets the right side of that offensive line down, you're in a pretty good spot. And let's not forget, with the offensive line the team had a year ago, you're probably one snap where Donovan Jackson trips over Carson Hinsman's foot and Kyle McCord's throw to Marvin Harrison Jr. is off target. If that goes as planned instead of the trip there, we're probably talking about the Buckeyes as the national champions, or at least going to the college football playoff after winning the Big Ten championship, because I feel like they finished that drive against Michigan. So yes, this offensive line has room to improve, but they were able to figure out ways to still win games as a team to get that close. And those are the margins in college football. And that's why I think when you talk natty or bust, like little tiny things can change the course of a season. And, that's why teams tend to hesitate to go all in the way Ohio State has. But they were close. So if you can improve some things on the offensive line, and it sounds, at least they believe that has happened this offseason, and you find that right guard that fits in, you're in a pretty good spot. Now, you still have to do that. All that has to happen, and that's where I think the questions still remain. And we're not going to know that really until a couple weeks into camp when pads go on, and frankly, not until probably a few weeks into the season when Ohio State starts Big Ten play and goes to Michigan State and hosts Iowa, and really then when they go out to Oregon in October, when we're going to really see if this offensive line is what they hope it will be.
Pat, it's become one of my go-to lines to deflect the culture problem questions that I field in comments about Ohio State having a culture problem. And I've said, no excuses. They didn't make the plays, didn't get it done. However, they were at the 35-yard line to end the season on the road at Michigan, and they were that close, whether you look at a mistake or two, like you just mentioned, or one pass completion away from being the number one seed undefeated team in the playoff. And if they've got culture problems, then they must be the most talented team in college football history to work through culture problems and just kind of throw out a 50% effort and still be that close to being the number one seed in the playoffs. So,
yeah. Well, and look, you're Ohio State. This is, the New York Yankees, the Dallas Cowboys. Pick your team that not only has historically been great, but has been great somewhat recently, and continues to be close, right? So you're going to get the standard is what it is. And I think the Buckeyes would all tell you that. The people inside the building at the Woody Hayes, they understand that fact. So when you're close, you didn't reach it, right? And that's just frankly what it is. Now, if we're talking culture, when you don't reach your goals, people are going to look for answers, right? And those, Ryan Day himself has looked for answers. Why couldn't we finish that game? And it's not just on that. He didn't want to put it on one play. He talked about, could we have gotten stops earlier in the game, or could we have been more efficient earlier in the game to score so we didn't have to be in those positions? Fans are going to look for answers too, and they're not in the building. They're not rewatching every play, every snap. Most of them, maybe some of them are. I know some Buckeye fans who do go back and watch a lot. So I'm not saying everybody, but culture's an easy thing to throw out, especially when you were watching Michigan and the last few years, and they've talked about physicality and things in the trenches, and I get all of that. And if you're Ohio State, you have to prove it. Now, this Buckeye team did go to Notre Dame last year in what was one of the more physical games I've seen, standing on the sidelines in that fourth quarter, and found a way to win that one late, right? You don't win that game if you have a culture problem. Losing to Michigan, it's not necessarily a culture problem. You just lost to what ended up being the best team in the country on the road. And frankly, from an outside perspective, if you're looking at that rivalry and you want that rivalry to be at its best, the home team is going to just sometimes win because they're the home team. And I'm not saying that's what happened with Michigan, but Ohio State was still one of the better teams in the country last season. And I think, too, the Cotton Bowl kind of affects the perception, right? Obviously, losing to Michigan, not making the Big Ten championship game, not making the college football playoff was always going to put a damper on what you were going to do heading into the offseason. But if you go out in the Cotton Bowl and look like the Buckeyes did most of the season, okay, fine. You have a better feeling going into the offseason. But Kyle McCord transfers, and Ohio State decides to try to tinker with the offensive line. Then Devin Brown gets hurt early in the first quarter, comes out of the game in the second quarter, and now you're playing with the freshman quarterback who's clearly not prepared. And so the game is ugly. It's boring. And then the defense, despite holding Missouri off the board for 3 quarters, just finally the dam breaks and they can't do it anymore. And so you go into the offseason feeling like, 2 losses in a row again for the second straight year. And I can see why people point to the culture. But having been around this program throughout the offseason, we're over there all throughout spring. We're there during the summer when they're having recruiting camps and coaches are around. You're talking to players. I don't see a culture problem. If there's a culture problem, I don't think 12 juniors elect to come back, frankly. If they wanted to finish their careers somewhere, they could have gone elsewhere in the transfer portal. Can it be better? Absolutely. Unless you win the national championship and go undefeated, there are always things that can improve. I'm not saying that, but I do think that the culture is right. It's just about getting over that hump, and it's not easy. It's just simply not. That's why one team each conference lifts a trophy at the end of the year, and then one team lifts the national championship. It's tough to get to that point, and that's not an excuse for Ohio State. The Buckeyes need to get it done.
Ohio State enters this season with a quarterback that has a proven track record, and they have certainly competed for national championships with quarterbacks who had never thrown a pass or who had limited time, like a Justin Fields, to rate where they stood. But Will Howard at least has a very high floor, if nothing else. We know that he's a dependable quarterback. Do you think it's just a matter of getting him ready for the season, or if there is a legitimate quarterback competition?
I would say it's somewhere in the middle. I think you do need to get him ready for the season. Like I said with Seth McLaughlin, you don't bring a guy like that to Columbus, to Ohio State, without the expectation that he will be your starter. But you also don't just give anyone the job. You want them to compete, and they've got to show it. And I don't think Will Howard did that in spring. We've talked to Will Howard a couple times now, and he admitted partway through spring practice that it was not as easy as a transition as maybe he thought, just because, you're uprooting your life and moving everything and all that comes with that. But also you are going from a Kansas State offense with Kansas State athletes. And again, I'm not trying to slight Kansas State, but Will Howard's top pass catcher last year was his tight end. Now you're throwing to guys like Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, Brandon Inniss. I mean, it speeds up everything. The rush speeds up, all of that. And so, it took him some time to settle in and get comfortable with everything that was happening around him and getting the ball to these guys on time and things like that, getting used to his teammates and the offense. And I think by the end of spring, you started to see the Will Howard that the Buckeyes wanted out of the transfer portal. He was, in the spring game, think of that, efficient passing, still maybe not the downfield passer you would have liked, but getting the ball out to his weapons, using his legs, which I think will be big. And that experience, when you get into some of those games, Oregon on the road, Penn State on the road, he's been in big time battles, right? He had to basically carry Kansas State to the Big 12 championship game a few years ago, in the Big 12 championship game a few years ago. So he knows how to get the job done. This will be the most talent he's ever had around him. And, how he uses it, we'll see. But that is the belief in Will Howard. Now, Devin Brown, despite never being able to show it to fans because of injuries and whatnot, is also a quarterback that the Buckeyes like. And look, if Devin Brown had stayed healthy and had a good Cotton Bowl, I think he goes into the offseason as the quarterback, and you don't even necessarily go to the transfer portal. Maybe Ohio State still brings in, a Julian Sayin because he becomes available, but you're not necessarily going out to find another starter because Devin Brown's going to be your guy. So I do think that there's a competition to be had during fall camp. If Will Howard doesn't build on the way he finished spring, then Devin Brown's going to have an opportunity to win that job. But if I'm looking in my crystal ball, I think you look to August 31st and that opening a game against Akron, Will Howard's your quarterback unless something crazy happens.
Pat Murphy's here breaking down the Buckeyes. Catch Pat's work on Bucknuts 247 Sports. Ryan Day made a comment during Big Ten Media Days about and would not just about every team in college football like to have this problem, figuring out the 5, 6, and 7 slots at wide receiver. Just your thoughts about it's an extremely, once again, loaded room. However, after Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate certainly got comfortable, caught, I believe, 18 passes last year, but a lot of just extremely talented guys that have not produced on the college level, whether they've had a chance or not. And I know that everybody's jaws dropped in regards to being asked the question about Jeremiah Smith. Jack Sawyer in particular was like, I was thinking this guy's got a lot of pressure on him. I hope he comes in and just feels like he doesn't need to prove anything. He can be comfortable, break himself in for a year. And then he saw him on the field and he was like, holy, this guy can play now.
Yeah, the wide receiver room is interesting because it takes me back to a few years ago when you had Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka kind of coming up. You'd seen them play some. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. had the big Rose Bowl. You had Jackson Smith coming back kind of in that Emeka Egbuka role. He obviously gets hurt, so you don't end up having him. But at this point in that, heading into fall camp, we thought, okay, we've got a veteran receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then we've got these young guys that we believe in, right? The difference, I think, now is that Ohio State, if all goes to plan, wants to play 16 or 17 games. All offseason, we've heard depth. We're going to have to play depth. Every position, we're going to have to play depth. Well, as you mentioned, yes, you've got Emeka. You've got Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Brandon Inniss, I'd throw in that in that group too. But then if you want to play depth, not a lot behind them. Bryson Rogers, veteran Jaden Ballard, Kojo Antwi. None of those guys have done much in college football. And that's what Ryan Day was talking about, was they need those guys to step up and be, guys that they can trust to step on the field, not have a big drop off, and can make plays, because they're going to have to rotate more at wide receiver or pull guys out maybe earlier than they would have, because they want guys healthy when it matters most in those big games and at the end of the season. We've seen injuries. Emeka Egbuka last season missed 3 games mid-season, doesn't ever really rebound from that. You're trying to avoid those things. Injuries are going to happen, but you're trying to stay as fresh as possible, have as much depth as possible. And then, even a Carnell Tate, a Brandon Inniss, a Jeremiah Smith, those guys still have things to prove, right? You mentioned Brandon Inniss, or you mentioned Carnell Tate's 18 catches. That's only 18 catches. I'm trying to pull the numbers up here because I did a story on it recently. The combination of, or the number of receptions behind Emeka Egbuka I want to say is like 24, 25. If I can find that number, I'll spit it out here. But it is not high. And so those guys have to show up and produce in fall camp. Yeah, 29 returning receptions between the team after Emeka Egbuka. So those guys still have to show up. They have to make plays in fall camp to show that they deserve to be on the field and can make the plays necessary once the lights come on and the season begins at the end of this month.
And before we let you go, Pat, on defense, it seems to be pretty airtight in regards to assignments. But are there any key backup positions or situations where you think somebody has an opportunity to show something to gain some playing time?
Yeah, I think you can point to a number of different spots. I think, we'll start up front with the defensive line. We know Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimalau, the defensive ends, but again, they're going to need to rotate. They're going to need depth. Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson are the known names, but production hasn't been there. There's a reason Ohio State hasn't rotated a ton at defensive end. Can both those guys going into their third year, really start to give confidence that you can take out the starting defensive ends at times and don't have a drop off? Think back to, when Ohio State was really rolling at that position and kind of how Larry Johnson rotated guys in. Same on the interior. You've got Ty Hamilton, Tyleik Williams. Where's the depth behind them? Who will those guys be? There's names. Hero Kanu had some moments last year. Tywan Malone came over from Ole Miss and didn't play a ton last season. So, can guys emerge as, factors in the rotation there? At linebacker, they still need to find a weak side linebacker. It's probably going to be one of CJ Hicks or Sonny Styles, but those guys still have to earn it. Behind them, you're going to need depth. Gabe Powers is a guy to consider. Arvell Reese, a name to know. But again, all of these guys have to continue to prove it. They had good springs, most of them, which is why we're talking about them. But, you have to carry it over. I think at cornerback, you've got a very deep room. You've got your three starters in Denzel Burke, Davison Igbinosun, and Jordan Hancock. But then behind them, you've got guys like Jermaine Matthews Jr., who started the Penn State game for Burke last year when he was hurt. Calvin Simpson-Hunt, who was the higher ranked of the two in the 2023 recruiting class, but enrolled in the summer, so didn't play much as a true freshman. They have an embarrassment of riches at cornerback, and we'll be fine at that spot. But, guys still have to, I just keep repeating it, guys have to develop. At safety, you got Lathan Ransom back to go with Caleb Downs. Guys behind them, not a lot of experience. It's kind of similar to receiver there in terms of the players who, can step in, names that Buckeye fans will recognize, but not necessarily names that are all that experienced. Jaden Bonsu was a guy who had a good spring playing while Lathan Ransom was kind of slowly brought back from his injury last year. Malik Hartford was a guy that last season had a lot of buzz coming into the year, didn't really play a ton after starting the second game of the season, but had a good offseason by all accounts. They brought in Nelson Jr. from South Carolina to add some depth as well. So, there are guys there. Just got to show the depth, and make plays in fall camp. And that's really what I think most of fall camp is going to be about. You are establishing other than quarterback, offensive line, linebacker, you're pretty much set, right? So it's about finding those next guys and then getting, obviously, the starters ready for the season.
Real quick, Pat, I also wanted to hit you up on running back because obviously you got the two stars in place, but Ryan Day has said throughout the offseason, 16 or 17 game season, hopefully keep those guys fresh. Buckeyes should win a handful of games by pick your score. So how do you think it plays out as the third back that gets those carries, or we don't want to see an injury, becomes the number two back at some point?
Yeah, so beyond Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, who I think we'll essentially call co-starters. I don't think it matters who takes the first snap each week. They're both going to play a lot. You are lacking in depth. When Dallin Hayden and went to Kentucky,
Evan Pryor left. Chip Tranum.
Yes, Evan Pryor also. Those guys leaves some holes on the depth chart, right? And So Ohio State's going to have two freshmen in James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon that will be third and fourth on the depth chart. They did have TC Caffey, who is a walk-on who at some point I imagine will be put on scholarship. He was coming back from a knee injury that cost him most of 2 seasons ago, well, half of 2 seasons ago and all of last season. Then he suffers another knee injury during summer workouts. So not a guy who's probably was going to play a ton, but was probably going to get some snaps, can carry the ball, can do some things. So that's certainly a blow to the depth. The Buckeyes sort of kick the tires at points on bringing in a transfer portal running back, but how do you convince a guy to come in and be behind Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson? It's hard to do in the transfer portal. You'd probably have to find a guy who just really loves Ohio State and is willing to, sit for a year maybe or two. But they do like James Peoples. They do like Sam Williams-Dixon. We'll see where Sam Williams-Dixon ends up in his career. The comparison has been made to Curtis Samuel, who started as a running back up to Ezekiel Elliott and then eventually ended his career as a wide receiver. And that's where he's been in the NFL. But certainly for this year, he will be at running back. James Peoples is a guy they like a lot. Looked good, I thought, in the spring game. And then Ryan Day talked about, maybe having some other guys in an emergency situation available to carry the ball. Obviously, he made headlines this offseason when he suggested that Caleb Downs could do some running back stuff. We'll see. I'm still just not convinced that you're going to risk that for a guy that you need on the back end of your defense. We talked about the safety depth. It's not great. So I don't know if you realistically put Caleb Downs back there unless you absolutely have to. But Brian Day mentioned Emeka Egbuka's carried the ball. That's been on like some jet sweep stuff, but he could take a handoff or two if you needed him to. Brandon Inniss, another guy that Ryan Day referenced. So you hope, like you said, Mark, you don't get to that point where you're having to put wide receivers in the backfield, but the depth is not as great as they would like it. Yes, you have two of the most talented running backs in the country up at the top of the depth chart, but if there are injuries there, it could get a little dicey in the backfield.
Pat Murphy setting us up for training camp. Join Pat on Bucknuts 247 Sports. The Buckeyes hit the practice field on Thursday. Pat, I'm smarter now, so thanks for being here, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mark. I appreciate you having me on the first live show.
Thanks a lot, Pat. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
All right. Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. Yes, this is the first fill in the blank show as we stand right now. The only thing we know right now is that we're sponsored by Chris Gates Fitness. Check out the line at training camp, and we will fill you in more on what that's all about. But it's an amazing offer. I will tell you that right now. $10 the first month. The link is in the description section of all the videos. I hope we still have Michael on the line. Let's take Michael's call. Michael, how you doing today?
Good, Mark. Good morning, sir. How you doing?
I am doing just fine. Thank you so much for your patience. We needed to get Pat in to talk Buckeyes, but thank you for being here.
Yeah, it was interesting talking with some of the guys. I haven't been following, haven't been able to do much this summer because of baseball and a few health issues, but I am really behind. I need to get Phil Steele's magazine soon, but I'm slacking on that. So if you want to get me on that stuff like that, you can. But hey, a couple questions I was trying to figure out is I was reading and watching some of the other things and stuff like that, and a couple of things kind of got me confused and stuff. How are some people ranking Luke Altmyer higher than Hudson Card?
Who's being rated higher than Hudson Card?
Luke Altmyer from Illinois.
Oh. Well, I'm trying to go back to their recruiting rankings because not that should not matter at this point at all. Zero, because Luke Altmyer's played quite a bit of football, and obviously Hudson Card's played a lot of football. So the only reason I bring that up is sometimes there is a stigma or there's a boost given to big-time recruits. Stetson Bennett. Took forever for Stetson Bennett to prove to anyone that he could play football because he was a walk-on 3-star. Well, he was a 3-star. Didn't have to be a walk-on, but turned out to be one initially at Georgia. And there's a ton of examples like that. So who is ranking Luke Altmyer above Hudson Card?
There's a couple of different YouTube videos I've seen and stuff like that. So.
All right. Well, based on my estimation, I think that Hudson Card is certainly a player that has proven himself more than Luke Altmaier has. Altmaier got hurt last year, and actually his backup, and I can't remember, he was a fifth-year senior.
Mike, because wasn't he also a receiver too? Mike,
no, you're thinking of somebody else. You're thinking of Isaiah Williams, I believe.
No, maybe it was, but there was also, they had a Mike, I can't think of his last name too. He was also a receiver at times too for the Illini last year. But I digress.
This guy was definitely not a wide receiver, but he was like a fifth-year quarterback, and he came in and saved the day like 3 times. He came in against Minnesota. They were down a touchdown. They were down to a 4th and 20, and he pulled that game out, ripped like 3 throws down the middle, won that game. He did the same thing against Toledo. Altmaier got hurt. He came into the game. His name was like Stanford or something like that. Anyway, regardless, Hudson Card has proven so much more on the field than Luke Altmaier. Altmaier is considered to have the bigger arm and the higher potential as a passer. Hudson Card is a better runner.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm on insurance stuff like that. And you're making me fight back tears with you on that magazine right now.
This is bothering me that I can't remember his name. The backup quarterback for Illinois last year. It's at the tip of my tongue. Paddock. I was all over the place. Stanford. Paddock. Yes. John Paddock. He saved the day a few times. 9 touchdowns, 3 picks, 59%. Altmaier, if you want to make the comparison here, just a shade under 65% last year, 270 attempts, 13 TDs, 10 picks. His QBR was 132.
Yeah.
And we go to Hudson Card.
I think he had 14 interceptions last year and like 20 touchdowns.
15 touchdowns, 8 picks, 59%, 2,300 yards, QBR 123.
Okay.
Well, the difference between those two figures is virtually nothing.
Yeah, now I'm crying, Mark, because you got that magazine. I can't get one yet. Hopefully soon.
Well, I hate to tell you this, Michael, because it really wouldn't, I think, cost either one of us or be worth our time, but I would send you one because Phil Steele sent me 2.
Oh, that would be so nice. I will DM you later. Another thing, I know we was going to do this last year, but things fell through. Is there any chance I might be able to do some writing or do some podcasts with you this year?
Whoa. I'm sorry, Michael. You spit that out way too fast for me. I'm sorry. I was still recovering from the mail order duty I'm going to have to do here.
Okay, I appreciate it. But no, I know you was looking for people to write for you last year for the website. And I was going to do that, but things fell through. Any chance I can maybe redeem myself or maybe do some podcasts?
Well, Michael, you don't need to redeem yourself. Don't say it like that. You have been a long-standing friend here at the Voice of College Football for a long time. You don't need to redeem yourself.
No, I appreciate it. I hope things go through. Oh, January 20th, you're going to have to wear a suit and tie that day, sir.
Suit and tie on January 20th?
Yes. You know what that day is, don't you?
Well, I know it's the national championship game.
And what else is it?
January 20th. Oh, well, January 20th is the inauguration.
Yes. And that's it. We have to officially swear you in as president.
Well, there's going to be a lot of other people wearing suit and ties on January 20th. It's not going to be too special if I wear one. Maybe I'll just pick a random day to wear a suit and tie.
Well, yeah,
if people would look back in the archives, they'd see me with a tie on and a jacket on quite a few times.
But we got to swear you in officially as president of college football.
I'll take it. Don't know if I want the responsibility. Maybe a few years ago.
But hey, on a serious note, I know you and stuff like that, but is this year you're going to be able to do some road trips?
Well, not as things stand right now. I'm not going to do any road trips. Again, that all has to do with sponsorships and lining up things that make sense.
No, I was just wondering stuff like that. Now, I know I might be crazy for saying this, and yeah, I know Purdue has a brutal schedule and stuff like that, but is there a way you think that they can eke out 6 wins and get a bowl game this year, or do you think it'll be worse than it was last year for them?
All right. Well, I'm looking up their schedule. We're going to post it here in just a second. I am thinking about actually if I can find some Thursday or Friday games that I could get to.
Oh, I can think of a perfect game for you. Purdue, Oregon this year at Ross State on Friday night.
Okay. Well, first of all, again, if we get the expenses covered, we would do that. Otherwise, I might be traveling close to home here if I can find some spots that have some Thursday and Friday nights. So anyway, yeah, let's look at their schedule because I know that it is a bear of a schedule here. So I give Purdue all sorts of credit for scheduling the 2 out of conference games that they did with Notre Dame and Oregon State and going all the way out to Corvallis. Need to win one of those games, Michael.
I know.
Got to grab one of those.
Which one do you think would be more likely, Oregon State or Notre? I think it would be Oregon State. I think Notre Dame's going to be a bear this year.
Yes. Notre Dame's, they're really good. They are going to have a really good season. Absolutely. People are high on Nebraska. I may not be quite as high as a lot of people on Nebraska. You do have them at home. They have not been winning 1-score games, of course. So until they learn how to win those, and they'll have a freshman quarterback only playing his 4th game at Wisconsin, at Illinois, Oregon. So what record do you want to get to, Michael?
And for that game, I would like to see, would 3-3 be suffice, you think?
But you want to get to a bowl game eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, 6 wins. Well, we got Indiana State. I think that if you can, get a win at Oregon State, you're 2-1 entering this stretch, and you can go 2-2 in that 4-game stretch right there. I don't think you will. I think that looks like 1-3 tops. But let's say you go 1-3, then you're 3-3. Like you just said, you're 3-3 if you beat Oregon State and you win one of those games, probably at Illinois. Then you're 3-3 and you finish your stretch drive and you've got to win. You could win 6 games. You got Northwestern at home. You've got Michigan State and you've got Indiana. You could get to 6. I'm not going to bet on it.
What about Michigan State? Nobody talks about them this year. Now, so how do you think Kurt Cignetti will do in his first year in Indiana?
Oh, Indiana. You said Michigan State. Indiana. Oh, I don't think he's going to do well at all. Not that I don't trust Kurt Cignetti, because I think he's an excellent football coach. And he's a brash football coach. He's trying to inject his program with a little swag. He talks him up a lot. He offered a challenge out to UCLA that I did not hear, but I heard about them coming out to the Rose Bowl to win that one. And he called out, as you know, Purdue, Michigan, and Ohio State in the offseason. He did an excellent job at JMU. But and Indiana's not a horrible football team. Their roster's not that depleted. So I think he could get to 6 wins himself.
Now, what about as far as Michigan State?
Well, Michigan State lost a lot in the transfer portal. They're bringing in a quarterback who has an Aiden Childs who threw 5 touchdowns last year in mop-up duty, but this is going to be his first go-around as a starter. I trust Jonathan Smith immensely. I think he's an excellent coach. What he did at Oregon State was remarkable. When he took over Oregon State, they had the advanced metrics on Oregon State football were the worst in about 25 years. And obviously he turned that into a 10-3 team, an 8-4 team last year, and one of the top 15 teams in the country. But I think it's going to take him some time. But I would expect Michigan State they will be better coached under Jonathan Smith. They will be better than Mel Tucker. They'll be better prepared, and they will execute in game, and he will put together a better game plan each week.
Okay, couple more things before I let you go because I know that you're popular and stuff like that. Who has a better season, Tyler Van Dyke or Will Howard?
Who has a better season statistically?
Yeah.
Will Howard.
You don't think Tyler Van Dyke can work with Luke Fickell's system?
Well, okay, there's three things that pop into my head immediately. One is if you're just, and this is why I gave it the condition of statistically, is that Will Howard has so much more talent around him than Tyler Van Dyke does. He's got a virtual all-star team around him. Number one. Number two, Will Howard has escapability. So he doesn't have to deliver as many tough throws under duress. He can escape the pocket and pick up a 3rd and 5. Tyler Van Dyke can't do that. Tyler Van Dyke's also been a bit beaten up in his career. His last 2 seasons have been injury plagued, and he also has a higher propensity of throwing the ball in traffic and not reading defenses well and getting picked off.
Yeah, another thing. PJ Fleck, David Braun, who has the better season this year?
Oh, that's a great question. That is a great question. I'll give the slight edge to PJ Fleck. But those are going to be 2 of the worst win totals in the Big Ten.
So you think Northwestern will regress compared from last year?
Yeah, they're not going to go 8-5 this year. Although they are pretty high nationally in returning production.
Last thing before I let you go. Coach on the hot seat this year from the Big Ten, you think?
Oh, from the Big Ten. I was going to say Billy Napier is the first name out of my mouth. From the Big Ten, well, you've got how many new coaches? So they're all safe. And even the second-year guys, unless Ryan Walters has a disastrous season, he's safe.
I think he'll be safe. Unless they go like 1-11.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yeah, if they beat Indiana State and then it's 11 straight, he might be shown the door. Yes, that's a possibility. Man, the bad teams have new coaches. Indiana, UCLA, etc., or a second-year coach. So your hot seat, man, I don't know if Illinois gets fed up with Brett Bielema. I wouldn't. I believe in Brett Bielema. I think he's a really good coach, and especially
Fleck,
a program like Illinois. What's that?
PJ Fleck, maybe?
Yeah, Fleck would be the guy. 5-7, but that was really his one bad season. I really don't think they're going to get rid of him. I don't know. You also have to factor in when contract extensions were signed and how much the buyout is for these coaches, which I don't know. But I would say PJ Fleck is going to leave before he gets fired.
Does Seattle leave before he gets fired? Or has he pretty much got a blank check?
Yeah, he seems like they would keep him around forever. They are so glad to have him. He's been the only coach that's ever pumped a heartbeat into that program, and he's got a good thing going. He's recruiting well. They've got their best team. Everything is set up for Rutgers to have an excellent season. Not that the recruiting affects this year, but the recruiting gives them a good vibe in the program. They're coming off their best season in 10 years. Their schedule is cake. You would love to have their schedule.
Yeah.
They don't play Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Iowa, or Oregon. Maybe the 5 best teams in the conference.
Yeah. And you think Iowa can finally score some points offensively this year?
Yes. Some points. Let's not hold them to too higher standard. Let's say they go from 133 in the nation in total offense to 90.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to say this right now on July 29th at 11:02 a.m. This is going to be Dane Laney's conference this year. I'm picking Oregon to win the Big Ten this year.
Well, I think you might have something there.
Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking about this and stuff like that because I know how many people chomping their bits for Oregon to come back to Columbus for a revenge game after what happened to them a couple years ago.
Wait a minute.
Didn't when Oregon went into Ohio State a couple years ago and beat them 35-21?
Yep. 35.
Ohio State fans are waiting for that game this year.
Yes.
And I got a feeling it might be the same result.
Okay, sure. But it's not in Columbus.
Oh, it's not? Where's it at then?
Autzen Stadium.
Oh, that's even going to be worse for him.
Yeah.
All right. Now, how do you think Lincoln Riley will do in his first year in the Big Ten?
I think that USC is the biggest wild card in the conference. USC and Nebraska are the biggest wild cards in the conference because Miller Moss has one great football game under his belt. Before that, when he was given mop-up duty, he did not look that impressive, but he was given one game against Louisville in the Holiday Bowl, and he came up aces, 6 touchdown passes, 372 yards. And you put his talent in Lincoln Riley's hands, and I believe that where Caleb Williams is phenomenal, the offense did rely way too much on him, and everybody stood around waiting for him to make plays, and he was constantly backpedaling and running around and making plays where Miller Moss is going to run the offense the way the plays are called. He's going to take his 3-step drop. He's going to make a decision. He's going to deliver the ball. There's going to be no running around, messing around. People are going to know exactly where the ball is. And so I think Lincoln Riley's going to be back to running the kind of offense that he wants to run and have the quarterback in play. Not that he didn't love having Caleb Williams, but he's going to have more control of the offense again. And they have tons of playmakers. Their offensive line should be good. Their defensive line may get beat up in the Big Ten. They have a completely different defense. Danton Lynn should be a huge upgrade as defensive coordinator. I think they're going to be a team to be reckoned with. But they go through a stretch of games where they don't play anyone that's that outstanding that they can't beat. But it's like they play a gauntlet of really decent teams just over and over. It's Rutgers, it's Maryland, it's Minnesota, it's Penn State. It's over and over and over. Everybody's capable of beating them. I think they should be in the 8-4 range.
Yeah, I can see that. All right. I won't let you go because I know you got other calls. But when's your next regular calling show? Because I got a couple other questions I wanted to ask you about. It's non-Big Ten related.
Here's our deal, Michael.
All right.
We're going to be here live at 10 a.m. every morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time. And then once the season starts, we're going to be live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. And then we're going to take the Thursday and Friday shows to late night after the games.
Same thing for the Saturday shows too?
Yes.
Sounds good. Oh, one other thing. With the show that Ben himself does now on Sunday nights, is that through the regular Discord channel, or do you have to join and subscribe to Patreon to get onto the new show?
Either Patreon or YouTube, whichever one, you can join the show.
Oh, so the old Discord doesn't work no more?
Sure it does.
Oh, but I didn't know if that would still be able to let me be part of the panel, or do you have to do it the new way now?
You don't have to do anything new. If you are a member of Patreon or YouTube, you can be on the panel.
Okay, but no, because originally it was Discord, but you can have to join either Patreon or YouTube to be on the panels. That's what I was asking.
Okay, if you are a member on Patreon or on YouTube, you get the Discord link.
All right, so the old Discord link's no longer good. It's the new Discord link.
Well, the Discord link runs out all the time. So if you need a new Discord link, I can send you a new Discord link at any point.
Good. All right, Mark, take care. Have a great day. God bless, man. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Bye.
It's our buddy Michael Hogue, Purdue fan. I love the people that root for, should I say it? Bad football teams. God bless you. You people are the heartbeat of college football. God bless you. Maybe I should have started a channel in a different sport because I'm not a front runner, but this is my one team that wins. This is my one team that's elite, that wins all the time. Best winning percentage of all time. Makes me look like a front runner. But I was not born in Ohio, but raised in Ohio. So I didn't give it much thought at 7 or 8 years old of who I was going to root for the rest of my life. But the rest of my teams, do I much care now? No, I don't watch anything else. But throughout my entire life, I suffered with bad teams. But I only say that because I give alter respect to the Purdue fans, the Wake Forest fans. We used to have a few Wake Forest fans here. Maybe they still watch, but we don't hear from them anymore. But Wake Forest fans, Oregon State fans, our buddy Connor, Clint, with Oregon State, although they've had a couple nice seasons, and it's not like they've been downtrodden consistently forever, but it's one of the worst programs of all time. Iowa State. If you root for a downtrodden program, let's see it in the chat. I doubt if there's much out there right now of the downtrodden variety. Mediocre. My bad, Michael. Mediocre. Purdue is mediocre. Last year they were bad. Daryl Hazel days, bad. Danny Hope days, bad. But Joe Tiller days, excellent. Of course, Jeff Brom. You needed to hang on to Jeff Brom. He was getting it done there. But hopefully better days for Purdue. Dylan, Kentucky fan. Love it. Kentucky fan. Now, it's not too horrible right now. It's not too terribly difficult to be a Kentucky fan right now. Although, I got to say, it's not like I've suffered through 7 and 6 seasons over and over and over and over. But certainly better than what you had a decade ago. And I will say about Purdue, one of my favorite facts about Big Ten football this century is that who's got the best record in the Big Ten against Ohio State? Anyone. Anyone. Who has the best record against Ohio State? Well, obviously Michigan, right? Doesn't Michigan have the best record against Ohio State this century? This century. I'm not talking about the last 3 years, the last 10 years. I'm talking about 24 seasons. Best record against Ohio State in the Big Ten. Anybody? Tim's all over it. Purdue. Purdue's got the best record of any team in the Big Ten this century against Ohio State. Are they like 5-10? I think they're about 5-10. They have got trampled the last few times. Ohio State blasted them last year. Ohio State blasted them in 21. And that was a pretty good Purdue team, the team that went to the Big Ten championship game, but Ohio State just wiped them off the field. I think those are the only 2 games since the West Lafayette game, 49-20, that Purdue pulled off that ridiculous upset and just crushed Ohio State that night. That's one of the bigger upsets in recent Big Ten history. Purdue was about a 20-point underdog. That team pulled off a couple nice wins that year to finish 6-7. But basically what happened to Purdue in the bowl game against Auburn, in which they were down like 49-0 at half and lost 63-7, that's what should have happened against Ohio State. But on that night, Purdue was the top 5 team and Ohio State was the 50th best team in the country, not the other way around, because Purdue turned out to be about the 50th best team in the country. And Ohio State, of course, had no issues with anybody else in the Big Ten. Although they did play some close games. It was not an elite Ohio State team, but they went 13-1, won the Big Ten championship in the Rose Bowl, and finished number 3 in the country. So I guess it was a pretty elite team when it was all said and done. But on that night, woo! But Purdue with those wins. 2001, Purdue won. 2004. 2009, 2011, and 2018. So it must be those 5 times. I think they're 5-10 against Ohio State. That's a great statistic. That is a great question to ask anyone. Who has the best record against Ohio State in the 21st century in the Big Ten? Yeah, and Michael reminds us that 2002 and 2003 both were they were nail biters. Of course, the Holy Buckeye played a Michael Jenkins in 2002, and then 2003 was a close one in Columbus. It was like, what was the final score? It was like, I used to know every final score. 13-9? No, that doesn't sound right. 16-13. I think it was 16-13. 5-9. Are you sure it's 5-9? I thought the Buckeyes got a 10th win against Purdue. The game that surprised me was not from a result standpoint in terms of a win-loss, but the 20, why are we talking Ohio State Purdue series? Michael's had such an impact on the show here. I guess that's what it is, but we're going to do this real quick because, hey, this is the show. Right now it's just called The Show, but we will name it soon. But I am curious about this because I want to get this straight. I'm meticulous about certain things in life and other things I'm not. And when somebody says it's 5-9 and I think it's 5-10, then what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to go to Winsipedia instead of trying to rack my brain to go through 24 seasons of play. Although I think I could do that, and I would have done that 5 years ago. We're going to pull up Winsipedia. It's 41-15 overall is your record there. 41-15. So I don't know if you can all see this, but we've got Ohio State won in 2023, 41-7. They won that 2021 game. That game was 49-0 at half. No, I'm mixing that up with the Michigan State game. My apologies. That's when I thought Ohio State may have gotten it rolling. And if you remember 2021, Michigan proved to be the much far superior team physically, not overall. They were close, but physically, Michigan was the dominant team. And that Ohio State team had all sorts of flaws on defense, of course. But at that point in the season, right before the Michigan game, they put together 2 games against Michigan State, who was ranked in the top 10, finished 11-2, won the Peach Bowl. And they just wiped them off the field. 49-0 at half. Same thing. Purdue came in. They were hot. They'd been playing good football. And Ohio State just that 59-31 might as well be 80-0. It just didn't matter what the score was. And then, of course, the Buckeyes got trounced by Michigan. So there's the Purdue win 49-20. So it's 2-1, 56-0 in 2013. So 3-1. The Buckeyes, that 29-22 game in overtime that they pulled out in 2012 to keep them undefeated, that takes us to 4-1. Purdue won the 2011 game against Luke Fickell, 26-23. That was an overtime game against Braxton Miller and company. What are we? Okay. Oh, that's what it is. That's the discrepancy. I guarantee this is the discrepancy right there. That suddenly this 2010 game never got played. It just does not exist. Look it up on YouTube and you are seeing a complete mirage. Ohio State won 49-0 in 2010, but that game didn't happen. And Yeah, I could rail on that whole situation for the next 4 hours. It is the stupidest thing imaginable that those games don't count. I know the letter of the law and I know the rules. I know all of that. However, all of that happened after 2010. So what do you do? Like, it's not like Ohio State cheated to win games in 2010, so you take away your wins. I am completely in favor of taking away wins and having wins vacated when the team cheated to win the games, whether they had a player eligible that shouldn't have been eligible, whatever they did back in the day, paid the player, fixed their grades, whatever they did, recruiting violations to get the player, whatever it was, if those impacted that season, then those games and those wins should be vacated. However, this is completely different. Ohio State won the games. They won the Big Ten championship, shared with Michigan State and Wisconsin in 2010, completed the season, won the Sugar Bowl. Then after that, their players sold their trophies and got the tattoos, traded the trophies for the tattoos. Okay, you suspend the players, which they did, which wrecked their 2011 season. That team probably would have won the Big Ten championship too. They wrecked their 2011 season. Okay, and the coach gets fired, leaves, and you rule them ineligible for 2012. So the damage that was, I'm about to go off on this because now that I think about it even more, I hear excuses all over the place, in particular our USC show. I'll have to bring this up to our buddy Tim at some point, making excuses about the USC sanctions just crippling this program for years and years and years and years and years. Okay, I understand Ohio State, I don't believe, lost any scholarships. But they had a season wrecked. They had 2 seasons wrecked, one in the record books, 2010. The 2011 season was taken from them. Really, they had 3 seasons wrecked by the NCAA. One, the wins were vacated. They wrecked their season in the record book, 2010. 2011 got wrecked because they forced their coach to leave and took their 5 best offensive players off the field. I'm sorry, their 4 best offensive players off the field. Their best running back, their best wide receiver, their quarterback, and their left tackle gone for 5 or 6 games, which caused Terrell Pryor to, of course, enter the supplemental draft in the NFL. And then, of course, it wrecked the 2012 season because that was the best team in the Big Ten. They should have been playing in the Rose Bowl or for the national championship, but they were ineligible. So the NCAA wrecked 3 seasons. Well, penalize the players. They did. Wreck their 2011 and 2012 seasons. They did. But don't go back and take away their wins after the fact. So anyway, that's where I think our discrepancy is. Because starting in 2000, Purdue won. So on the Ohio State side, it's 0-1. Then Ohio State won in 0-1, 2 and 3. That's 3-1. Purdue won in 2004. That's 3-2. Then Ohio State in 07 and 08. That's 5-2. Purdue in 09. That's 5-3. There's the vacated win. 6-3. Purdue won in 2011. 6-4. Then the Buckeyes in 2012 and 2013. That's 8-4. Purdue in 2019 and the Buckeyes here in 2021 and 23. It's 10-5. 10-5. All right. And I know I just took up like 10 minutes on that, and most of you don't care. I get it. But I care. College football guy is asking which game I'm most excited to watch this year. For me, it is the renewal of the Texas A&M game. So I'm going to take Ohio State off the board, and that's a great one right there. Love that answer there, college football guy. The game I am most excited to watch. That's an interesting question, because you would think that I would have this locked and loaded, like having reviewed the schedules so many times and thinking about all these games and the schedules and who's going to win what. And we're going to have to set up a prediction show here in maybe 2 to 3 weeks. We'll do a big prediction blowout. Either I'll do a video or we'll just do it live. I don't know. We've done both. Which game I'm most excited about? I think I'm like you, college football guy, most excited to see a new matchup. I want to see a new matchup. So that would be Michigan, Oregon, USC, Michigan, Texas, Georgia, those games. I am most excited to see Georgia go to Texas and play that game. That's the game, but there's a lot of them, but I'm going to go with that one. All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football as always. And we certainly want to remind everyone that your health, your fitness is paramount. It is most important. So, folks, in addition to being a massive college football fan, be just as interested, just as engaged, and make fitness a priority. You got to have health and fitness goals. So listen up. We've got a new sponsor, Chris Gates, and his online fitness membership called Training Camp. Training Camp is a monthly fitness program designed specifically for football fans. And yes, it's honestly like nothing you've seen before. I've gone through the website. Chris is sponsoring us this week here at the Voice of College Football. We will explore the website this week. He's been coaching people for years. So you get a professional coach. You also get the engagement and the attachment of being able to interact with Chris, and he's your coach. He's created a community in Training Camp that blends fitness and sports together to help you achieve your goals while connecting with a community of sports fans doing the same thing. So you probably, like me, and actually, I don't mind working out. It's more the eating portion of it that's difficult for me. So I don't mind working out. I don't love it. It's not like I love working out every day, but I generally don't mind fitness and exercise. But also there's a component here there are some nutritional aspects of this that you need to take into consideration as well, that Chris has some nutritional tips here. But in terms of the exercise, you get a daily plan, different workout every day. So it's not just do these exercises whenever you want. No, it's a daily plan that you can follow along and track your results. And you're going to see results. Chris also shows you how to do the exercises. You've got access to a private online training camp community. So that's what holds you accountable. That is what gives you inspiration and encouragement to do it again today. And then tomorrow is having encouragement. I've heard this a zillion times, whether it deals with fitness and nutrition, whether it deals with anything in life, that you probably can't do it by yourself. You need a community, and that's what you get here. In addition, again, to professional coaching. And here in the first month, you get a massive discount. Sign up this week. You can get your first month for $10. That's 80% off the monthly price. $10. Just go to chrisgatesfitness.com. The link is in the description section of the video here, and all the videos here at the Voice of College Football. And the promo code is VOICE. So what is this show going to be about each and every day? Well, of course, it's going to be about college football. And in many ways, if you just drive by, it's going to be something close to what we've done for years and years here at the Voice of College Football. We're going to bring on the very best guests we can find. We are going to converse with you through the call-in lines. We're going to take your comments and questions there in the chat. Please consider the super chat opportunity that you have to support us here at the Voice of College Football. Also, the more effective way to support us here at the Voice of College Football, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. You see it on the ticker down below. Just look me up at MarkRogersTV at Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App. Again, that's the most effective way to support us here at the Voice of College Football. What this is going to be a combination of is the common calls and comments and questions from you, some of the best guests you're ever going to see. We're going to continue to expand that guest list. So think about this. We've had Phil Steele on in the last couple of weeks. Phil would like to come back before the season starts. So we'll have Phil back on, and we're going to have him on live, and we'll take your comments and questions to Phil Steele. Also, we've been in contact with Tony Barnhart, who would love to come on the Voice of College Football. So Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart, should be on here in the next couple of weeks, as well as Peter Burns of the SEC Network. So we're going to have top flight guests, of course, your calls, your comments, your questions. And then you may hear a few more rants and commentaries, maybe more on the commentary side at times, more on the rant side, as the one that I just went on concerning the NCAA and its treatment of Ohio State that I did not plan on. I would like to get to a point where, as you see with a lot of sports, but more so political shows, if I had the time, I would love to really prepare for this show and deliver a nice, neat, tightly, well-crafted commentary each and every day. Keep this under consideration. I heard Bill Maher say this the other day. Bill Maher, with whatever his show's called, I heard him in an interview with, I forget who it was, just the other day, a couple of weeks ago, mention that his commentary that he delivers, which is extremely well crafted. He's a good writer. He's obviously a comedian, so he's quick-witted. He's funny, all those things. Guess how long it takes him to put that commentary together for his weekly show? He threw out some number like 10 hours. Now, of course, I don't have 10 hours to put together a commentary for this show each and every day. I would be putting it together in like 20 minutes. But so it will probably never happen. It's all just going to come off the top of my head, through my lips. But I would love to get to that point at some point if we have the kind of support and the kind of setup that I would enjoy here at the Voice of College Football. I would deliver a really well-crafted commentary every day, because I'm certainly a better writer than I am a broadcaster, and always have been. As we mentioned at the top of the show, this show is named We Don't Know. It could be named by you, and if you make your suggestion and we take your suggestion and name the show based on your suggestion, you get a free item at the Voice of College Football merch store. But I got to let you know, all transparency, always here at the Voice of College Football, that I've got about 6 or 7 names rolling around in my head. And as soon as I planted rear end on fake leather today, I thought of another one as soon as I sat down that I may go with. But if you've got a really good name for the show, and I just described what we're going to do every day, then let me know down in the comments section. Don't put it in the chat. I won't see it. Please put it in the comments section, or you can email me at markrogerstv@gmail.com. We've already received, 6 or 7 suggestions for the show name. And again, I've got a few rolling around. Don't be mad if I don't select yours, and don't be mad if I don't select anyone's and go with one of mine, and nobody will get any merch. We'll come up with something else to give away merch. Okay, we'll do that. Also, keep in mind that we've got a new programming schedule for the month of August, which is highlighted by this right here every morning, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern time, taking your calls, your comments, your questions, and of course, with a great lineup of guests. But check out the video where we posted and went through the programming schedule. What we're going to do later in the month, at the beginning of the season, is I believe we will take this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and continue at 10 a.m. Eastern time once the season starts, but take that Thursday and Friday shows and we'll move them to after the game. So we'll go from 10 a.m. and we will slide it to the back end of the day after the Thursday and Friday games. And if the Thursday and Friday games are dogs, either the matchup is a dog and there's going to be little interest in those games, or it's 49-10 in the third quarter, we'll come on early. But if it's a great matchup or a much anticipated game, we will do a true post game after that game. And I know that Fox, of course, has a really good lineup of games on Friday nights. So we will most likely go on after the Fox game on Friday nights. Unless, again, if it's 35-0 in the third quarter, we'll just come on early and don't want everyone to wait around, including myself, until there's double zeros on the clock of a 49-3 game. So again, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, all through the month of August. Once the season kicks off, Thursday and Friday shows go to after the games. I always reserve the right, based on my personal life, to change things from time to time, but that's the plan. And that's the show that needs to be named. So please give us your suggestions right here at the Voice of College Football. All right, thanks for stopping by here on a Monday. We'll be back Tuesday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. And the other aspect of the show to keep in mind is, unless I've got another appointment, like, for example, on Wednesdays, we typically do the Buckeye show at 11 a.m. Eastern time, which makes this a tight hour on Wednesdays most of the time. But this show is going to last as long as you want it to. So I may come on one day for 18 minutes because it's obvious that nobody cares and we don't have the type of support that we need to continue the show. But based on response, based on calls, based on contributions and support, I could be on here for 5 hours a day. That is up to you. So we appreciate it here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Before that, we got the Texas show at 7. We got the USC show at 10. So you'll see this bright, shining face again tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern time over on the USC channel. And of course, Matthew Miller with Texas at 7 Eastern on the Texas channel. Right here at the Voice of College Football. We'll see you next time, and send in those names. Oh, look at that. I can't miss a super chat. I apologize for that. Hopefully Matthew is still with us. Matthew, I'm supposed to be paying you, not you paying me. All right, let's see what we've got here. Matthew says, Mark, I have been told that Oklahoma is the best defensive line in the SEC. I had them at 6. Who is right? Maybe ask Phil Steele. Well, we can ask him right here. He's not going to say anything different than what his book says. I got to say that besides having conversations with our guy Parker Thune, which I have a number of times concerning Oklahoma's defensive line, that I can't recall every conversation I have with everyone. I will have to admit to not being an expert on Oklahoma's defensive front right now. I'm going to recognize the names as soon as I read them, and also of Texas's defensive line, which has, of course, been depleted by the losses on the interior. But then, of course, they picked up the stud from UTSA on the edge. Let's see what Mr. Steele has to say. So, defensive line. In his rankings, just to give some context, defensive line, Phil Steele has Ohio State 1, Penn State 2, Utah 3, Michigan 4, Nebraska 5. Then he has Texas 18, Oklahoma. Am I missing them? Texas 18, Oklahoma 21. So very close. Texas 18, Oklahoma 21, according to Phil Steele. And then in terms of a write-up, this is going to be very statistically driven. So I don't know if this is going to give us a lot of insight, but we'll give it a look here. Oklahoma defensive front. In 2022, they had to replace 3 NFL draft choices, 2nd, 4th, and 7th rounds, allowed 213 rushing yards per game in Big 12 play with just 28 sacks. Last year, 2023, Oklahoma returned defensive ends Ethan Downs, 13 starts, added Trace Ford, Oklahoma State, Jacob Lacey, Notre Dame, Rondell Bothroyd from Wake, 14 sacks in 2 years, and DeJoun Terry from Tennessee. They were deeper and more physical up front and cut it to 139 yards given up on the ground per game, 3.9 yards per carry, and 24 sacks. This year, Oklahoma loses Bothroyd, who had 13 starts and 25 tackles. Defensive tackle Isaiah Coe, D tackle Jacob Lacey, D tackle Jonah Lalulu. Also, 13 Big 12 performer Downs. They return to John Terry and Trace Ford. They add first team MAC defensive end Caden Woolard, 9.5 sacks and 12 starts, and fourth team Big 12 defensive tackle, of course, Dominic Williams from TCU. Plus, the 8th and 26th rated true freshman in the country, and remain strong with depth being the strong suit. So that's the take on Oklahoma. That's pretty in-depth. That this guy is better than anyone when it comes to this. So you might as well just go straight to him. Not that it's perfect, but it's factual. Texas defensive front. Phil Steele says, Texas improved to allowing just 126 rushing yards, 3.5 per carry, and recorded 27 sacks in 22. Last year, they lost the defensive end, who had 12 starts, 54 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, a nose tackle, and a defensive tackle with 32 tackles as a 7th-round draft choice. Texas had 10 blue chippers on the D-line, led by their super defensive tackle combo, and allowed just 82 rushing yards per game, 2.9 per carry, 32 sacks. This year, Texas loses the Outland Trophy winner, Tavondre Sweat, of course, 2nd-round draft choice. First team Big 12 defensive tackle Byron Murphy, 14 starts, number 1 draft pick, plus 2 backups. The D ends return intact, and they add 4th team All-American Conference defensive end Troy Moore from UTSA. They should have a better pass rush, and they added Bill Norton from Arizona and Jermaine Lowell from Louisville to bolster the interior. So there you have it. He likes Texas slightly better than Oklahoma on the defensive front, but he likes Oklahoma's depth. So there you go. Matthew, I hope you stuck around long enough for us to get the Phil Steele take. Lisa's asking, Mark, do you know why the Big Ten is waiting until August 2nd for the 4 new teams to officially join our conference instead of July 1st before Big Ten Media Days? I don't. I don't. I am trying to think of a reason why that would be. I am almost positive that it doesn't impact, obviously, the athletics calendar in terms of spring sports bleeding into the summer, like the College World Series goes on and on now. I wonder, no, the Olympics are going to go past August 2nd. I wonder, I thought maybe for a split second, like there was some kind of stipulation with athletes and medal counts or something that might have been tied back to the Pac-12. That's a great question. I'm going to look that up. Or I'm going to ask, better than looking it up, because anybody can look it up. I might as well go to my contacts who would know better. Yeah, so we've got a lot of great Big Ten contacts out there with 247 and our Big Ten information guy on Twitter, and maybe our buddy Greg Flugar might know. But I'll poke around a little bit, Lisa. Appreciate you asking that question. I did not see that listed anywhere, so I gotta say, it didn't run through my mind when we were kind of celebrating the Oklahoma-Texas July 1st date as immediate entry into the SEC. Exactly. They did do it on July 1st. It didn't hit me that why is nobody talking about Oklahoma and Texas, and when does that come up for the Big Ten? It's interesting. I'm guessing it's just a technicality that there was some extraneous little loopholes or agreements that had to stretch it and keep a few things binding through July concerning those 4 schools in the Pac-12. That's my guess, that it has nothing to do with anything that's going to affect anything on the field or in anything permanent or real. But you guys know from signing contracts or being involved in situations that there's usually a few things out there that maybe something has to be moved just slightly or dates moved just to accommodate something that's been in place since 1970. So thanks for the question, Lisa. That was very astute of you. So we appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, our next show is Texas Live at 7 with Matthew Miller. I'm live with Tim and Matt on Trojan Conquest at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And then make it on back. We had a small crowd for our first day. Never to be discouraged. Bring some friends with you. 1, 2, 5, 50 would be great. Here every morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, taking your calls here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you on Tuesday.